Yippee-ki-yay! Let's talk about frontotemporal dementia. As many of you may have heard, Bruce Willis has been diagnosed with this horrible neurodegenerative condition. I'm Dr. Justin Chandler, a neurovascular neurohospitalist, and I specialize in neurology in these conditions. In this video, we're going to talk about briefly what frontotemporal dementia is, how it affects the brain, behavior, and what you can expect with the prognosis.
Yippee-ki-yay!
You see, the early anatomists and neurologists named this condition correctly. Frontotemporal dementia. It's the part of the brains that shrink or lose their neurons. It is one of the most common causes of early onset dementia and typically presents when individuals are in their 50s and 60s, with the mean age being 58. It presents with individuals having these prominent behavioral changes. And these are things like having inappropriate social behavior. That inappropriate social behavior often happens because people with frontotemporal dementia, those are the regions of the brain that are affected, end up having disinhibition in their social interactions. This disinhibition can come across as inappropriate touching or kissing of strangers or people that no one is familiar with. It can be displayed as public urination, an individual deciding to just go over to the side of a building that they're in and urinating. Things like intrusive behaviors, like offensive flatulence, or offensive remarks that are made completely out of context and inappropriately. You've got to remember, your frontal lobe helps you understand when the timing for things is appropriate. It's like when you go to sit down on a date or when you're with your family talking. When do I wait and then interject in a conversation? Do I wait for the food to come out to the table before I start eating for someone else to have their food brought out? How do I interact? When do I interact? In frontotemporal dementia, as the frontal lobe shrinks or experiences cerebral atrophy, as those neurons die, as the neurons in our temporal lobe start to die and wither away, our ability to interact at appropriate times and in appropriate places becomes severely impaired. This is the social problems and the disinhibition that is faced when someone has frontotemporal dementia. And then they have very compulsive behaviors. These can be compulsive behaviors in regards to their speech, their language. They can express lots of hoarding behaviors. They may be constantly cleaning, or they may be expressing checking behaviors. They're constantly going back to the door to check something, going back to the door to check the locks. These are all findings that we see in regards to the behavioral changes in people that have frontotemporal dementia. They also don't understand the effect that this has on their friends or their neighbors or their families. In fact, they seem completely oblivious to it. That can make living with or helping someone with frontotemporal dementia incredibly frustrating. The saddest part, and the thing that is perhaps the worst part of any diagnosis of dementia, and particularly frontotemporal dementia, is that we have no cure for this. What we can do is we can do things like behavioral modifications. We encourage our patients to exercise, to increase their blood flow to their brain, to maintain an active cardiovascular system, to give their brain the best chance and reserve it can have. And then as doctors, caring, compassionate doctors, we try everything we can. And there has been some benefit with some SSRIs or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, medications like trazodone or antipsychotic medications that can help calm the behavioral abnormalities in people with frontotemporal dementia. And because we have no cure, and because this is a chronic and progressive neurodegenerative change, we get asked all the time, well, what is the prognosis? What does this mean going forward? When someone is diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, the younger they're diagnosed with it, the worse the outcome is, and the more rapidly it will progress. And at best, people have 8 to 10 years left of life.